No, you have to unpin yourself.
Unpin myself.
Oh, okay.
Pin yourself.
But we didn't.
I didn't pin myself.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you have to click the screen, the sharing screen, and then click pin. Did you see it?
Oh, yeah. Unpin. There we go.
Yeah.
You're a genius. Okay.
Thank you so
Obviously,
much.
we don't use Google Meet. Zoom all the way. Okay. Go for it. Whenever you're ready, Kevi.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay, probably can you sit, because some of you are not in the frame.
Oh, are we in the
You're out of screen.
Okay, yeah. Okay, right. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So today we have a very special guest, not guest. So actually, we're very lucky. It's our pleasure to invite two professors to talk about linguistic imperialism and diversity today. So one is Genevieve Leung. She's from University of San Francisco. The other one is Ming-Hsuan. She's from Adelphi University in New York. So let's welcome them, and they will introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. So just in case, Ming and I are we're at Ming's house. And Ming is going to be controlling the PowerPoints, and we're using two laptops, old school dual monitor style. So if you're wondering why we're looking at each other in this way, that's why. Okay, nice. All right, so we have a few agenda items for us to discuss today. I'm going to close this out. We're going to start with a poll, and then we're going to talk about linguistic imperialism. What is it, and how does it relate to us as language teachers, and also kind of language diversity as a whole? And then kind of talk about our roles as English language instructors, and then also discuss these kind of tensions around these notions of cultural ambassadorship, and then the idea that culture and cultures are fluid, and how those all intersect and interface with our own situated identities and intersectional identities, right? And so we'll spend the kind of last 30 minutes or so debriefing and doing kind of Q&A. So you'll have a little bit of lecture. The breakdown is sort of on the top right corner, right? You have sort of 50 minutes of sort of talk, and then a break, and then we'll kind of open it up for more discussion, right? So it's really awesome to see you all here. I know we don't know each other, but hopefully by the end of today, we'll kind of get to know you a little bit better. Okay, I can introduce myself. Sorry, that was a nice segue. Thanks, Ming. My name is Genevieve. I am, as Kevi said, an associate professor of rhetoric and language at USF. So I am actually on a different grant in Taiwan right now through the Taiwan Fellowship. And so, you know, it's kind of serendipitous that Kevi and I we talked about various things. And so my background is I'm an applied linguist, just a sociolinguist. And at USF, I teach in the rhetoric and language department. I have taught and directed the critical diversity studies program at USF. I currently direct the Asian and Pacific American Studies minor. And I grew up in San Francisco. I was an ESL student, and Cantonese is my first language.
大家好，大家好，好吗? So as you can see, I am from Taiwan, and I speak several local languages, including Holo, Hakka, and Mandarin. So I grew up in Taiwan. I learned English as school subject. English has been my favorite subject throughout my kind of student life, because I got a lot of praise whenever I score high in English tests. I got a lot of praise from my teachers, from my friends, and even from my parents. So it's not very surprising that I end up teaching English after I graduated from college. And then I went to the state for my master and PhD degree. So right now I'm an assistant professor in TESOL and bilingual program in New York metropolitan area. So I work a lot with pre-service and in-service teachers. So basically in New York State, content teachers are encouraged to have ESL certification after 3 years of their working. So I work a lot with pre-service, in-service teacher in the sense. They came to our program to get their ESL advanced certificate or bilingual extension. So throughout my career, I have worked intensively with immigrant students and family, and I oftentimes feel that my multilingual background helps a lot. So I'm hoping that today I can bring in perspective as a teacher trainer, as well as a local Taiwanese. And 2 years ago, Fulbright invited me to review the ETA proposal for this cohort, so I probably got to review some of your applications. So
in
I will be,
DC, right?
yeah,
in DC.
in DC, and I'm gonna do that again this year. So I'm very, very excited. So I thank you all for kind of choosing to come to Taiwan. Yeah, Taiwan has been my kind of very, very special place. Even I work in the state, I come back to Taiwan every summer. So that's why I'm still here. Yeah, I got to go back to the state on Friday, and I'm gonna miss this place so dearly until next time I come back.
Yeah, actually, and I wanted to just right, you actually got promoted, so you're associate professor now. And me and I met in graduate school, and that's why we've done a lot of these teacher training, in-service, pre-service teacher training things together for the last, what is it, like 12, 13 years? It's been a long time. So it's a pleasure to be able to collaborate with Ming again. All right, so I'm going to ask Ming to maybe, okay, we'll show this for a little bit. If you could, I'm also gonna drop this in the chat. But we're gonna, oops, this is not it. This is it. 1 second. Those of you who can read, and sorry, the link's not like you can't just click it, but the link is here. If you could just access that real quick, I'm gonna have Ming close out this, and I'm gonna share a screen. We have a quick poll. We have 9 questions to get to know you all a little bit better. So let me do this. Here's a window. Here is this. Okay, so the first question here is, you're no longer presenting. Your screen is still visible. Okay, can you all see this okay? Yeah, there we go. Oh, here we are. And we're gonna live stream just like the Olympics. What's happening? What's happening, Ming? How's the scoreboard?
So we have quite a few of you currently in Taiwan, right? So many of you are also in the States.
Ooh, someone's in Europe.
Someone's Europe.
That's awesome.
Wow, that's great. So we have more of you in Taiwan. Like... Gring, gring, gring. Very nice.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. It's good to know. Oh, there we are. Oh my gosh. Taiwan's on the map. Yay. Okay. This is good to know. So we kind of have a nice sort of, maybe it looks like a third of them are in the US, and maybe 2/3 or a little bit under that are okay. Taiwan is hopping. So that's great. Okay.
So that's good. So it means that many of you have already have some good, I hope, good experience in Taiwan, so we can contextualize our talk a little bit more as we move forward.
Cool. Okay. So the next, and sorry, I can't share full screen because, okay, this also, here we go.
Oh, you guys already did
I'm
that.
activating, sorry, the
Excellent.
English. My first language is English. Agree or disagree?
We have about 80% of them having first language, English as their first language.
Okay.
Nice.
We'll give folks maybe 3 more seconds. Maybe this actually has, the question has already been activated for a while. Okay, so we have about kind of a majority first language English speakers, and then 15–16% as English as an additional language. Cool, thanks. Good to know. Okay, here's the next question. I am of the same class background as most of my students in Taiwan.
Disagree.
So agree or disagree. So thinking about your own teaching experiences in Taiwan. Okay. Cool.
So in research in the US for multilingual and multicultural education, researchers have commented that when teachers are coming from a different class background with their students, they might encounter some challenges in their teaching. So for example, they might not be able to relate to their students' lived experiences. So maybe keep this in mind as we talk about how you can better relate to your students.
Cool, great. Thank you. So far, so good. You know, everybody's so engaged and active. Cool. Okay. I'm of the same ethnic/racial background as most of my students in Taiwan. Okay. It's about almost the same kind of percentage, right? Right. Okay.
So again, I want to comment on that ethnic and racial identity is very important, right? To understand our own experience and others' experience. So in what ways can you incorporate that into your teaching is something to think about. Because after all, the students come from different ethnic or racial background from yours. So how can you expect them to understand your experiences? And what would you need to do in order for them to understand your experience?
And we realize that we have both clumped ethnic and racial together, and we also have made you force choose agree, disagree, right? This is for the sake of the opening poll. We realize there are like lots of nuances to tease out, but thank you for responding. All right, we have the next one. So this is about feelings of being supported in the Taiwan context. So I feel supported by my LATs in Taiwan. Okay. Okay. Oh.
Wow.
Okay.
This is way higher than I expected.
Disagree is getting a little higher. Okay. Oh, there we go. It made the double digits. Oh, okay. Somebody took their answer back. Okay. 90%. Wow, that is really high.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Wow.
Cool.
This is great.
Okay. Thanks. And we have other questions about support. And this is about peer support, right? So I feel supported by my fellow ETAs in Taiwan. Okay. Ooh, okay. Wow. Kind of a similar. Oh no.
Oh, okay.
Okay. A little bit of a difference here. Okay.
Okay, wow. Okay. So I believe that before you depart from the US, you all have some kind of idea about how this 1 year or 2 years will look like, right? And then providing not just work support, but also emotional support is very important for your experience during this time. So that's why we will include this one and just kind of want to have a sense of how everybody is doing.
Okay, I think we're rounding up to the last of the agree disagree questions. I feel supported by Fulbright Taiwan as an ETA. Okay, those numbers, they're moving. I feel like a sportscaster right now. Okay. Okay.
We have a slightly kind of higher disagree percentage than the last two, huh?
Okay, this is also good to know, right? So we've got kind of your coworkers in the classroom context, you've got your peers, and then you've got sort of the institutional sort of the different kind of nested institutional structures that you're working within, right? So that's why we asked you these questions. Yeah, and these are all anonymous. Like I can't go back and see who responded. So I mean, you could be honest, or you can just not. That's okay. This is just a quick and dirty poll, right? So okay, so I'm going to activate this. This is now an upvote kind of response, right? So what has been the most difficult part about teaching English in Taiwan? So you can type your answer and then you can also upvote. So if somebody else has written what you feel like, oh yeah, me too, you can like push that up. Okay, so we've got, great, thank you, language barriers. We got CLIL, okay, CLIL, the ever dreaded CLIL. Okay, we've got lots of language barriers happening. I'm not a trained educator. I have also experienced that, former JET alum here. not trained as a teacher at all going into Japan, right? Okay, so we've got a few of that, working with a co-teacher. CLIL, okay, CLIL is making its way up. Okay, working with the okay, CLIL, working with the co-teacher. Okay. So maybe it has to do with sort of not being able to support my student because of the language. Emotional, yeah.
So language barrier remains the #1 challenge, right? And I have to say it's very challenging. I definitely can feel that, because even though I share the same language with the kids here, I feel like being away from Taiwan for so many years, I forgot what lives and what like a type of challenges they might have. So language barrier definitely impede your ability to feel more connected with them.
Okay, wow. So this really is sort of the top hits, having to teach a large classes with students. Classroom management, yes. Different standards from LATs. Okay, wow. Okay, intercultural differences, communication, methodology. Okay, wow. Y'all have some really excellent items here. Lack of student motivation. That really also resonates. I taught at a vocational high school in Japan. Nobody was interested in English. Classroom management was a problem. Right, okay. Standardized test. I can't respond as, okay, and that's okay, right? So no worries, right? We know some of these questions won't apply necessarily to everyone. Okay, co-teaching, right? Okay, thanks. Thank you for sharing all. I think this helps us give a good picture of the field and the group we're working with. So thank you. Okay, I think this is the very last one, and this is a open-ended question. You can just type and we'll see your answers. What expectation do you have for yourself this upcoming semester? So when you arrive in Taiwan and start teaching the next semester of classes, what expectation or expectations do you have for yourself? What goals? Stay positive and have fun, right? That's a good expectation to have, right? Grow as an educator.
Excellent.
Oh, learn how to manage a classroom.
Right.
I've taught college level for what, like 10 years now. I still, that's a struggle sometimes for me too. Advocate for myself, agency in the classroom. Flexibility. Yeah, okay, I see flexibility.
Yeah, even though you have developed a really nice lesson plan, you always need to have plan B, right? Because things might not go as you expected. So definitely be open-minded, be flexible.
Yeah, making kids feel good about themselves, right?
Wow, that's great.
To be super outgoing. So I have adopting this like teacher persona, right? Like to be okay. Improve my Mandarin. Yay. Connecting with students, yeah. These are excellent. Wow. Unlearn my biases, okay, especially as a white person. Taking initiatives, yeah. Wow, committing myself to only English in the classroom. I love speaking Chinese. Connection, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, local teachers probably expect you to use only English in the classroom. So definitely this is a goal, right?
Yeah, building rapport. Yeah, these are all excellent expectations and goals. Yeah, learning student names. I know it's hard, large classes, right? Lots of names. Yeah.
And then with the tones, right? It's hard.
Right. All right. Okay, so this is super helpful for us. I'm going to stop sharing so that Ming can share her screen. So thank you folks for engaging in this poll with us. I know, I don't know, sometimes I do the polls and my students, they love it or they hate it. They're, you know, it's either or. So while we wait for Ming's, yeah, here we go.
Yeah, so that's kind of sum up your responses here. Your responses really give some insight as to how you see yourself as English teachers, right? A lot of times Fulbrights expect you to be the cultural ambassadors. You are bringing or introducing American culture to students in Taiwan. And cultural, intercultural knowledge has been something that the local government tries to highlight, especially in the new curriculum. So you guys really came in the right time as the government tries to promote like a globalization. But then at the same time, kids in your classroom might not seem to think the same way. A lot of times when they are required to learn English as a subject, when in reality they don't got to hear a lot of English, they kind of question, like, why do I need to learn English? Why do the parents, the teacher want us to learn English? I have heard lots of complaints like that. Oh, there is a sort of like a stereotype or a pre-assumption that as long as you know English, you are part of this global community. But the fact is that even if you don't speak English, you can still be part of a very active global community. So be a little bit critical about that. What do you want to teach to your students? Sometimes, for those of us who have studied critical education theory, we see English education as emancipatory learning. We hope that will get to liberate our local students. But then for a lot of kids in Taiwan, English education for them might be just about passing exams one after another. So think about that as you go into your classroom, what you want to make an impact, okay?
Yeah, so that's great. And I think it really does echo a lot of what the folks in the room have been discussing. So thanks. All right, so we'll go in and talk a little bit. We'll start out kind of zooming out by, how is English seen globally? What does the research say? And there is actually ample research here. English on the right hand, in the yellow, you can see probably terms you've been familiar with: English as an international language, English as lingua franca, English as a second or additional language, English as a foreign language, English, or academic English. Right? All these kind of terms are actually quite imbued with various types of baggage and meanings behind it, right? So academic English, kind of a specific genre of English versus, English as a lingua franca, and what does that actually mean? But folks who are doing kind of work on kind of critical language studies have also kind of commented, and maybe a lot of you here are also kind of seeing this, that English is also seen as this lingua Frankensteinia. I think that's kind of a witty little pun there, or a killer language, right? Because at the expense of learning English, what languages are lost, right? Thinking about Hakka, Taiwanese, indigenous languages that all get sort of pushed down a little bit lower at the expense of this mad rush to learn English in the Taiwan context, right? Mm-hmm. English as a T-Rex, English as a guilty language, because, right, speakers of English, learners of English, teachers of English are engaging in this, what folks call kind of the thieving, cultural thieving of others, right, at the expense of English. And so there is a lot of, I think thinking about teaching English as a field, realizing that there are these really kind of unreconcilable tensions that are there, right? The Hydra, English as Hydra, right? Of this monster of many heads. One head could be like English is seen as something very good, but the other head, this other monster head that kind of emerges from the same being, it's both good and bad, destroyer and sort of liberator at the same time, right? So these are sort of the ways that folks have been talking about, and these are all scholars of, a lot of them are English as additional language learners, folks who come from post-colonial contexts, right, have written about these contentious relationships with English, while at the same time researching and teaching English, right? Mm-hmm. And so I like this quote at the very end: English as a well-intentioned auntie who overstays her welcome and meddles in family affairs, right? So these are, I think, apt metaphors. Those of you who maybe have been working in teaching English or maybe have learned English as an additional language may feel these tensions as well.
Mm-hmm. So putting this into Taiwanese context. So when I came back these years, one thing that I found is how so many young kids were being put on the pressure to learn English. And a lot of parents with young kids, they are so anxious about their kids not learning enough English. So you see that they spend a big chunk of their salary on sending kids to learn English. And those conversations often start with their insecure feeling as not very proficient English speakers. So you found that when parents are not very confident about their English proficiency, then they chose to spend so much money, invest so much time in their kids' English education. And I would say that sadly, that really takes away kids' time to learn their heritage language. If you are familiar with the Taiwanese context, the Holo language and Hakka language now could be considered as like in danger, because the current generation, they cannot converse fluently in Hakka or Holo / Taiwanese or in indigenous languages. And when the local government tries to promote heritage language education in the school curriculum, you hear parents are so against that idea. They would rather that the government put in more money and spending more time promoting English instead. So you see that a lot of parents, with the mind that they want their kids to learn English, they push the government to do more for the English education. But you don't see as much push for the heritage language education. And for someone who have been doing heritage maintenance education, it's very concerning that the government right now tries to aim for a bilingual country for Taiwan for before 2030. And I think Fulbright actually has been an important part of this. Because of this governmental policy, Taiwan wants more ETA to come in. And I'm not like criticizing this policy in any sense, but I just want to highlight that when you teach English, you have to really take into account the local context. How many other languages are being spoken among your students? And sadly, you might find that a lot of them are losing their heritage language.
Yeah, so I think we're talking about this in relationship to this kind of this nestedness, right? That there are costs involved. There are emotional costs, economical costs, cultural kind of costs that are nested within these structures, local level and institutional, that you are playing a part in, right? So we just wanted to situate that for you. And I'm sure you all are like, oh yeah, this is true. I know this, so that's great, right? So we're gonna sort of move on to the next slide. When we talk about kind of the summing up of sort of English and the folks who are fairly critical about English and the spread of English, but at the same time kind of working within those parameters, right? That folks think that the spread of English is this kind of, it is insidious, it's self-perpetuating, it's pervasive, right? It can be powerful, but at the same time destructive and inimical, right? The process of language domination is complex and also contradictory. And we actually want to focus on this fourth point, which I think is where like implementational spaces can arise, right? There are fightbacks against this domination, and it can happen while at the same time teaching English. And we want to sort of recognize as well that English is not alone in its cultural feeding, right? So Mandarin is also kind of considered, you know, folks learning Mandarin at the expense of their heritage language is another form of this kind of hydra. This language domination that gets talked about, right? And language is very much linked to culture as well. And so when you see kind of that trickle down effect.
I want to highlight this very important concept. When we talk about languages and then their speakers, it's important to keep in mind that languages in the society are not equally distributed in terms of power and prestige. Yeah, I would say about 20 years ago, people who spoke local languages like Taiwanese, oftentimes they were regarded as someone of little education. But then right now, even though the trend has shifted a little bit, we can still say that English in this country has been viewed as something with really a lot of prestige and power. Kids were encouraged to spend lots of time improving their English. Yesterday, I took my kids to the hospital, and while she was waiting for the doctor's appointment, she was reading Harry Potter in English because she's more proficient in English. And then guess what? So many people came to her, surrounded her, and then comment, oh my God, this kid must be genius because she's reading this English like a book so thick. And then I saw my kids were like raise her up kind of thing to look at them. And then she was just like, oh, they are making me a little bit uncomfortable. But then after we came home, I asked her, do you know what that really means? They were like, yeah, they all comment like my age and how smart I am. So this is what English is being viewed. If you speak English well, the local people sometimes equate that you have a higher IQ. You must be very smart. So think about what that impact those who are still learning English, those not with high English proficiency, they might be viewed as someone who don't learn well, who doesn't have good learning attitude. And if you ask about these among local teachers, they sometimes will show up their own stereotypes about English learning. So you will see that, and I will kind of hope that you be very critical about some of the comments that you might hear from local teacher or parents about English education or English proficiency. Because as I said, most of the parents, they are not bilingual in English and Mandarin. So in that case, they would put too much emphasis on English. Yeah, they might view you so highly because you are someone who speaks really good English. But then this needs to be challenged and disrupted, because I will want to highlight that a lot of very knowledgeable person that I met in Taiwan, they don't speak English. And that don't really undermine their ability to communicate or to convey any language. So I want to highlight again that the fact that you are coming from an English-speaking country carries a lot of weight. Yeah, your student will view you so highly, local teacher will view you quite highly, but there is something else that you can do to sort of uplift the local people's knowledge or your students' knowledge in a way that don't really undermine your own, say, authority or something. So I would like to share the numbers here. Fewer than 4% of the world languages have any kind of official status in the countries where they are spoken. So in Taiwan, Mandarin is the official language, but right now the government wants to make English an official language. Okay, there has been a debate on when and whether or not we can elevate English and make it another official language. But then thinking about that, people are willing to discuss that possibility, but they are not willing to talk about the possibility of elevating other local languages to the status of official language.
So indigenous languages are only seen as indigenous and not official, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So the resources that indigenous language or other local languages can get compared to English is really, really little, right? So again, keep that in mind. Not all languages are equal. And in fact, English has this huge dominance across the globe. And not to mention the case in Taiwan, where right now the government wants to make this country a bilingual country. Bilingual only in the sense Mandarin and English. Yeah, it really kind of ignore the fact that many of the Taiwanese people are actually multilingual already.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So why are we kind of spending this time in talking about this linguistic asymmetry, right? Because it does trickle down into hiring practices, right? Which I think leads also into racialization, gender issues, right? So this is why we wanted to focus kind of first big picture and then kind of funnel down. And so lots of work has also been looked at in terms of English teacher recruitment. And so having been recruited, maybe you'd be interested, and also a little shocked, or maybe not surprised, that there are job ads out there for usually more private schools, or cram schools where it's like Western looking applicants. No ABCs, please, or native foreigners only. Native foreigners, like native foreigner, right? Or we need real foreigners. Parents have that requirement, right? So you see these kinds of discourses of the same stereotypes that Ming has sort of talked about, like the privileging of English, manifesting in these discourses from parents, from teachers, from hiring partners, etc. Right? So there actually has been lots of work on discourse analysis about these types of job ads and the kind of the racialized. It's not implicit, it's pretty explicit what they're looking for, right? And so in the next page, I think in 2018, Kang Chao International School kind of had this controversy where somebody was posting, a teacher was posting that they needed substitute teachers, and then kind of on Facebook, and then there was this personal note. The school has informed me that it will not accept applicants from people who are not from predominantly English-speaking countries, who are Black or dark skinned. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, right? So kind of this apologetic discourse, but at the same time, it's like, well, this is the sort of the hiring practice and the lay of the land, so to speak. And it doesn't excuse it, but I think there's like these very rampant discourses running around that privilege certain types of speakers of English, right? And so their response after lots of uproar and calling for something to change was, we do not discriminate on basis of race, creed, blah, 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 blah. Right, so I think, so there are these sort of macro level discourses that can, official statement types of language that get tossed around, but at the same time doesn't change the fact that the hiring practices still persist. There are certain types of people that still get privilege over others, even while at the same time being, native speakers, or like, I'm not a native speaker of English, but I also don't qualify as being a, native foreigner native, right? So, so we're going to talk a little bit in the next few slides about like the confluence of these identities.
Yeah, I want to highlight this idea of native speakers, right? It should be challenged at all levels. And unfortunately, right now in the hiring practice, you still see that a lot. So take myself, for example, I was educated in English profession, right? But then when I applied for job in Taiwan, I receive comments like, oh, sorry, this is not what the parents want, so you won't be able to really got higher pay, even though you have a higher degree than our other foreigner teacher, but you won't be able be paid according to your degree. So think about how I would feel about myself. I often feel it's very unfair, and yet it's hard to really argue with the local hiring practices, because they often would say, oh, it's because what the parents want. But the thing is that for those of you who are listening to our talk, I want to highlight that being a native speaker is only part of your identity, right? So for me, not being a native speaker is only also just part of my identity. It doesn't mean that I am less competent. So I would rather people see me as a whole person. I'm trained in English education. I learn English as a second language. Both could be an important asset to assist my student. And for you, a lot of times, while being native speaker is being prioritized, but that's is not you as a whole. Oftentimes, depending on where you are from, if you are from the inner circle, meaning that English is the official language and the medium of instruction for schools, then you got another point. Check, right? Whether or not you are white is another important criteria that local hiring agency often look. If you are Asian or Black, then sometimes they would be implicitly suggest that, oh, you are not the type of person they are looking for. And gender as well. In some schools, they might prefer male over female, and sometimes it's the reverse. So I want to use River's article and Rudolph's article to really highlight that when we look at ETA's experiences, we should not just treating you all in one category, either universally privileged or universally marginalized, because doing so really fail to capture your experiences, experiencing fluid privilege and marginalization. At one point in your stay in Taiwan, you might feel good about your privilege. But guess what? At some point, you might feel like you are being discriminated because of maybe your race, because of your language proficiency or because of your cultural knowledge. And sometimes these moments might have some impactful like a moment in your life, especially when you are far, far away from home. So don't underestimate these small moments. Yet sometimes you are experiencing the privilege of being a native speaker. You are like enjoying the praises that you receive. But sometimes really quickly, once you step out of the classroom, when you interact with local people, you might experience some discriminations from that. So be, what should I say, be strong, I guess, but then more importantly, support each other. Because after all, we all experience different privilege and marginalization at different times of our life. So be supportive.
Yeah, and we've actually done several projects on ETA identities and this kind of sliding scale, multiple sliding scale sort of understandings of being both privileged and marginalized at the same time. A lot of ETAs have talked about that, as well as their kind of their ways in which they're incorporating different facets of their identity, which they see as strengths, into the classroom, into context where they're like, this is how I gain agency. And I think that's something that folks have mentioned in the, what are my goals for this upcoming year, right? This idea of agency and teacher agency. How do I do that? How do I leverage that, right? Okay, I think the next slide, yeah, great, that's you.
Yeah, so I want to bring in Valdez's idea of elective bilinguals versus circumstantial bilinguals. So when Valdez introduced these two concepts, she mainly talked about the Spanish speakers in the United States. So depending on whether or not individuals are forced to learn the dominant language or chose to learn an additional language on their own, that would impact their own language learning experiences. And when I first learned about these two concepts, I found it very fascinating because it's not like exclusive. Okay, at one point in my life, I see myself as elective bilinguals, but I feel like I started out learning English sort of like a circumstantial as well. So using these two concepts to re-examine your own language learning experience, and then using these two concepts to understand your students' experiences. Are they elective bilinguals? Are they circumstantial bilinguals? Okay, because or can they be both? Why? And when are they elective bilingual and when are they circumstantial bilinguals? Because knowing the difference will help you build a better rapport with them and then make you a little bit more understanding.
And also thinking about this, for yourselves, right? Were you all bilingual or multilingual because you wanted to, because it was, part of an English, like an enrichment program, or was it something like you were forced to use it to function in a society, like you were living abroad and you had to learn Mandarin? Like right now, I have to use Mandarin, even though I have a very contentious relationship with Mandarin as a Cantonese speaker, right? So thinking about that helps me understand kind of more broadly my students' choices or maybe their constraints with language learning.
Exactly.
And so I think earlier I mentioned that we talked about the research projects we've done with interviewing ETAs. And so our colleagues interviewed various Asian American ETAs talking about their experiences living and working in Taiwan. And actually what we found, we didn't actually query this, but we found the theme that Asian Americans talking about living in Taiwan is that their English ability is constantly questioned, right? So on one hand, in the States, they're seen as sort of this forever foreigners trope, or you can't really be American because of your Asian face. And then when they get to Taiwan, their comments are, oh, I get questioned because I look like people in Taiwan. I am automatically assumed not to be an English speaker, right? And so kind of this both never in one context are they considered legitimate, fully legitimate, right? And this research has also been found in Korea, Korean American males and teachers in Asia talking about their experiences. They feel like, oh, I left the US and kind of the feelings of masculinity or emasculinity in the US context. They don't feel the same in that way in Asia, but at the same time, they still feel like, oh, the language part, I'm always seen as like, I'm not a legitimate English speaker, right? So at this kind of sliding scale of different privileges and marginalizations happening at the same time. Black English teachers in Korea as well, so there's been research on kind of the ways in which kind of exiting the US context, but being in Korea, still having to kind of contend with these stereotypes that Charles says includes the following, right? And I think Charles was a former teacher in Korea and kind of looked at her own experiences there. And so we welcome you to also kind of think about and sort of academize a little bit about like, why is this happening? And is there literature that can help me ground what's happening? Because it is out there, right? If you would like to ask, we actually have a reading list, and you can feel free to query us anytime. We're happy to share with you. There's a lot of research on kind of this context and racialization happening on multiple scales globally, right? So what's happening in the States, it does trickle down to what's happening in Asia, right? Anti-Blackness, for example, in Asia is happening, and that is very, very, very clear and apparent. But the kind of the nuances and the ways it's happening is not just like direct import, right? So we in order to sort of understand what types of marginalization and what types of privileging is happening, right, needs a little bit more research, right? And it is under research.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit about my own experience giving a talk to a group of elementary students in Taiwan this summer. So they asked, the owner of that private crane school is my friend. So she asked me to talk about American culture, not just language, the American culture. So one of my slides at the very beginning is to put on several famous people's photo and ask the kids to choose who do you think are American. And then not surprisingly, they all chose the people with white face, right? Like people who are white. So when I told them that, oh, Jeremy Leung is also an American, and they were like, no, he can't be. He must be Chinese. Yeah, he can't be American, right? So the things that for a lot of them who receive information about American culture through, say, limited Hollywood movies, maybe, or news, they still have that very stereotypical idea of who counts as American, right? And then I was a local teacher, oftentimes have the same stereotypes, the same idea. So if you are people of color, then how are you going to situate yourself within conversation like that? Yeah, be prepared that you might encounter some various kind of comment that will make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I want you to interpret these comments in context, right? So for example, if you are in the US, if you hear comments like that, you will probably be like very angry and want to fight back right away.
I get a lot of, your English is really good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. That sort of way. But here in Taiwan, I think you will get different comments, right? And a lot of the Chinese American or Asian American ETAs in our research from last year did talk about how those comments from local teachers and students are really hurting their feelings, right? Again, be supportive to each other. Even if you are not ETA of color, you can still show support, in many ways, and be sensitive to comments like that. And if you feel like you cannot find a way to grapple with those, you can reach out to people who are more knowledgeable with the US and Taiwanese context.
And it's not to say you can't be angry, right? It still doesn't make you feel very good when people are like, your English is so good. I mean, yes, I learned it. And I've been speaking it for 30-something years. But I mean, it's just the ways that you respond critically to redirect and to kind of open up these implementational spaces towards conversations about how is it different? Here's how this comment made me feel, right? Is sort of one immediate action plan. And so I'm looking at the time, and I know we said we promised you a break, and we have been talking at you for quite a long time. So I would like to offer, let's say, a 10-minute break, and we'll come back. We have a few slides, and then we're going to open it up actually for you all to interface with each other. So please come back at, I think it's now 10:31, and then we'll reconvene and finish up the rest of our slides. Thanks. Sorry, I was like trying to fit myself in the frame. Okay, I'm gonna pause.